Welcome back to this rather odd edition of the YAHOWAH blog. We had an episode that was cut short by dog tail. That is, I would imagine, fairly uncommon, isn't it, Wookie, about such programs. It wasn't Wookie who did it, but this one right down here who is nudging my leg, Asher, a yellow lab. She decided that it was appropriate for her to be petted, just as she is hitting my leg and hand even now. And she has this big otter tail, and that otter tail took a big swipe at the streaming computer that we use for this program. But if you consider the fact we've been doing this now for 5 months, and we've done sometimes as much as 5 or 6 hours of live streaming in a day, and other days 1 or 2 of these live stream programs, but a lot of programs over 5 months. We've only had 2 where we had maybe 3 max, where we've had a glitch and part of a show recorded and it was sound, and then we just had to reboot and go at it again. So you roll with the punches. That's part of the job. You've got to be able to deal with obstacles that are thrown in your path, don't you, Wookie? And make the best of them, and be prepared occasionally to reboot and start again. So we're going to save what we had previously presented to you. It does have a 4 to 5 minute black period, and it does resume, but I'm going to pick back up with this next statement that is found in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 now, that follows that marvelous presentation of the Nachri in 2 Chronicles 6. Well, here I am being whacked by Wookie tail. So this is what it says. And reason this is important is that Solomon's name speaks of reconciliation. What the Adamah Parah is accomplishing, this Nachri's sacrifice, his most important moment when he serves, is the final sacrifice of the Moed Mikre on Towrah in year 6000 Yah, 2033. It will be on the 24th of September, a Shabat, to the celestial fanfare of a total solar eclipse, and before the entire remnant of the children of Israel on the Temple Mount, he is going to be offered as a sacrifice for shalom, reconciliation. And this is the last opportunity for intervention, and it is Yahweh, just as he did 2,888 years previously with, and on behalf of Elia, who will once again be orchestrating these ceremonies pursuant to the sacrifice of this Adamah Parah. He did, that same sacrifice to rid Israel of political and religious influence, reprise that same role. Yahweh is going to provide both the water this time and the fire, and these fires are going to reach up into the heavens, and they have 2 purposes. They will purge the final remnant of Israel that has been viewed as an adulterous woman of her guilt, so that she is in a position to be betrothed to the returning king, who is Dode. So it is Numbers 19 providing the remedy for Numbers 5 is what we have here, and it's being presented now in this context, pursuant to the prophecy regarding the Nachri. And we also find that in what I'm going to share with you again, that this is an elevating offering. It is part of the sacrifices, of which there are 2, because you have Dode laying down his bashar, mortal body, as the Passover lamb in year 4000 Yah, and I'm, as the Adamah Parah, this Nachri, I lay down my bashar, corporal body, to fulfill this mikre. So it's part of these 2, both of which serve the purpose of preparing God's family for what is to come in terms of return back to the conditions of Eden. And because God's mortal remnant now are prepared, cleansed to be in his presence, the glory of Yahweh can resume, and he is going to return at that moment, such that his wayward family can look up to him and at Dode as his firstborn, whom they pierced right in the heart by not recognizing what he had achieved, as the Romans pierced him in the hands and the wrists, crucifying him as the Passover lamb. This is the stage that is being set before us. So the prophecy, speaking of a historical event, as Yah is wont to do on numerous occasions, reads, and to reveal the relevant comparison, history and future history, if you will, to reveal the relevant comparison, as soon as Solomon finished, independently demonstrating and furnishing this justification for intervention, the fire descended out of the heavens, as it will, during the sacrifice of the red heifer. And it consumed this elevating offering, making it rise and become acceptable as part of the sacrifices. And then the glory and the splendor, the manifestation of the power and reward of Yahweh completely filled the Bereth family home, which is one of the reasons that I have said so many times that this final iteration of the home for Yahweh's name and for the covenant family is going to be comprised of light. And it's going to be almost like the walls are crystal. And so God's light will radiate in it, around it, through it, and illuminate all of Jerusalem and our earth. We won't need the sun anymore, although it will be a lovely thing for photosynthesis, since the whole earth is coming back to the conditions found in Eden. And what I was sharing with you in this last program is that fire is often misunderstood. It's simply thought as, okay, this is a manifestation that they didn't have any light bulb back in the day, no electricity, so God revealed himself through fire. They just don't understand the metaphor of fire. First of all, fire is enlightening, isn't it? Fire is inviting. When you see around a campfire, you're drawn to it. It is warming, and it's spectacular for cooking a meal and removing the pathogens from food and the way that it cooks a meal. And fire is purifying. But most importantly, beyond enlightening, beyond inviting, beyond warming, beyond be warming, it means it's also protective. Beyond extending our day into the darkness and piercing the darkness of night and keeping all sorts of bad things at bay, and preparing our food, fire transforms what is a liability, these physical bodies. With the physical body, that's as I've said, it's just the stupidity of the Christian religion and their resurrection, which they borrowed heavily from Osiris and Dionysus and Bacchus and Tammuz. That's the last thing you want to do. And when your physical body dies, the last thing you want is to go back to a physical body. It is counterproductive. You want to get rid of the physical body so that you can have your soul be enmeshed in light and energy, so that you can travel through time and through the universe and enter heaven and be in God's presence. So fire does that. It transforms organic material into energy, and energy is vastly more powerful and enabling than is matter. And fire is the thing that is the most transformative in this regard, which is why God uses it as a metaphor. So it's beyond that fire is purging. It's beyond that fire is consuming. It's fire that, more than enlightening, fire is transformative in this regard. So Yahweh is providing justification for using his knackery as the red heifer. doing so on Yom Teruah, which is the day of the herald, to prepare the adulterous woman of the Torah, Numbers 5, via Numbers 19, that story that we have read about the Adamah Parah. She metaphorically serves as a portrait of this mortal remnant of Yisrael who is finally willing to be prepared for her betrothal to her returning king, Dowd. And for this to occur, God must ignite the flames beneath the sacrifice, just as he did 40 Yobel, 888 years prior with Eliah, when ridding Israel of the advocates of religion and politics. The same will transpire once again. One of the things the religious, particularly rabbis, never get, even Christians, when they talk about Eliah returning as a witness. We're having a conniption fit here over something between the dogs, and they're not playing well right at the moment, but we'll get this resolved too. But Eliah is the most anti-religious of all Yahweh's prophets. Eliah is the one who not only exposed, debated, bested, demeaned, mocked, satirized the entire religious and political cadre of Jerusalem. He mocked the king and the queen, so the politics, and he had 850 prophets of Baal, that is the Lord. The Lord is pervasive in Judaism, Islam, and in Christianity. He denounced the Lord, because the Lord is actually Satan, and he denounced Asherah. And there is an Asherah in Islam. Muhammad coveted Asherah Day, not knowing it was the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God, and part of the Babylonian religion. And of course, it is essential to Roman Catholicism. Asherah is the model for Mary, the Blessed Mother, the Madonna and Child, the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God. It's all based upon Asherah, and so it is Asherah that was denounced. So Eliah is expert at denouncing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in this regard. So that will be the ceremony that Yahweh will reprise what Eliah has done, but with the Adamah Parah on a much grander scale for the whole world to see, and to purge his people, as well as incinerate all of those who are religious or political and have come to do them harm. This will be the transformative day between the end of the time of Jacob's troubles, which will have ended that day, have gone on for 7 years prior, beginning on Shabuah 22 May of 2026, ending 24 September 2033 in year 6000 Yah, and 10 days later is when Dowd arrives with Yahweh. That is the story being presented here. So when Yahweh lights the fire that will consume my Bashar body, which I will gladly give because it does me no good going forward, it's going to be a bolder and more public version of incinerating, well, Dowd's corporal body as well, because after he successfully served to fulfill Passover as the Lamb, 40 Yobel previous and 33 CE, his physical body was incinerated as well, in keeping with the Torah. So just as Dowd alone fulfilled Chakmah, there is but one Olah, elevating offering on this Moed, and the victim is presented as feminine singular because the Adamah Parah is a red heifer. Now, that is the symbolism of it. You're not going to see a red cow that is sacrificed. You're going to see a bloody red man that is going to be sacrificed at this time. By fulfilling Teruah in this way, the surviving remnant of Yisrael will rise above their guilt, because it will be purged and incinerated, then washed away by the torrent of cleansing waters. The remnant is now prepared to enter God's presence and to grow as a family. Speaking of family, we now have the all hands on deck. We have Leah in here trying to entertain Asher and Wookie, and Rich manning the controls, and we're committed. We're committed now, all hands on deck to getting this episode accomplished for you. And you can see you do have to be able to work under distractions here to get this job done. So the Nakri is one of the two men who was offered in this capacity during the Moedim, these restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony of the designated appointments. Dode is the other, although that when I say Dode is the other, that's a little bit, a lot understated. The sacrifice Dode made of Pesach, opening the doorway to life and to God's home, is for all people for all time that accept his sacrifice. Where the Adamah Parah is simply for this final remnant of Yisrael that are gathered there at that time. Dode's sacrifice is forevermore. Mine gets them in the door so that then they can manage and grow, manage their lives and what they know and how they respond and how they grow in terms of their appreciation of Yahweh and their relationship with him going forward. And also, Dode made the sacrifice of having his soul, his nefesh, carry our guilt into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again, which is a much greater sacrifice than what I'm being asked to make. But, that's the difference between our roles. He's king, I'm herald. He's the greater luminary, I'm the lesser luminary. He's projected as the sun, I'm the moon. They are hugely different in our roles, and you can probably tell from my perspective, I'm eager to point out the difference. I do not want his role. I would prefer to have a smaller role than I have, much less not coveting the one that he has. I've had responsibility all my life, and the less responsibility, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to do the best I can to honor the responsibility that Yahweh has given me, and I will do my best to honor the responsibility that Dode expects from me. But I am glad that I report to them and not the other way around. As we move through this statement, while the Olah was singular, the Zabak, the sacrificial victims, are presented as masculine plural because it is two men who fulfill this role. Now, once this is accomplished in accordance with the Torah and the Nabiim, prophets, Yahweh will appear above Jerusalem in all of his glory. This manifestation of his magnificent persona is going to fill the skies above this Bareth home of the covenant family, and it's going to beam out from this marvelous structure that will be comprised of light, and it's going to have glass walls. It's just going to be, well, everything around these 10 days are in 15, if you go all the way into Sukkah and the transformation of the earth back into the conditions found in Gan Eden, it is just going to be the most magnificent 2 weeks, 15 days ever experienced in human history. And of course, it goes further than that, because there's the 7 + 1 day of Sukkah. And then from that point, we began the 1,000-year celebration of the Shabat of Sukkah, and then forevermore after that. So this is just the grand prelude to the greatest event that will ever be witnessed, and everyone within the covenant family is eagerly anticipating this, knowing that we have a lot to accomplish between now and then. So at this moment, every celebrant of Yom Kippurim, the Day of Reconciliation, will be shouting Yahweh's magnificent name. And as we do, this brilliant projection of God's light will fill his Bereth. His Be'eth, I should say. Bereth is covenant. Be'eth is family home. Streaming out in all directions as his sun beams with pride and with joy. And as we go, we made it. We got it done. It happened. We're going to go on a sabbatical. See y'all later. I don't know if that's exactly how we're going to respond, but it'll be a glorious experience. All too often, the most relevant spiritual metaphors associated with fire are completely overlooked. I shared from the heart what I have come to appreciate about fire. I'm now going to read to you what I wrote as I was comprising this chapter. The story that I'm telling you now and the material that I'm reviewing with you is actually part of the final book that I intend to write for the Yada Yahowah series. It's called Bashar Herald. It is Coming Home, the fourth volume. So it will complete the Coming Home series at 4 volumes, and it is the story that I fulfill on behalf of our returning King. So it is from that perspective that this is being written, and so all of the translations that I'm sharing with you now are new. All of the commentary is updated. This is really the summation of all that I've learned along the way. And we have a long way to go in this material. There's a lot to learn. So yes, fire is enlightening, it's warming, and it's inviting. And yes, fire is purifying, particularly in cooking by purging what we consume of bacteria and other toxins. But it is how fire works that is the most relevant. Fire is transformative. Just as Yahowah will be emancipating and elevating, even empowering and enabling us by exchanging our decaying physical bodies with all of their limitations into vastly superior energy and light that has so much greater capacity. Similarly, fire transforms dead organic matter into radiant energy, which is a form of light. And we watch this marvelous evolution from matter to energy. We grow ever wiser by reveling in the direction of the flames, always reaching upward toward the heavens. One of the reasons, folks, that I like the written word. You can take time and consider the alliteration and the nuances between every term. Well, 3,000 years ago, Yahweh revealed that he would use a Gentile, an Akri, an observant foreigner, to reach his people and to call them home. He would even endorse what he would write and say, telling Yehudim to listen and then do as he asked, recognizing that his Nakri would Nakar come to know him by being observant, and that he would understand by being discerning, and that he would prevail by being responsive. Yada would explore by closely examining and carefully considering the Torah, Nabi, Wa Mizmor, the guidance, prophets, and Psalms. Composing Yada Yahowah, these books that you see behind me, they're all free on the bookshelf at yadayah.com. And in the process, he would not only reveal the proper pronunciation and importance of Yahweh's name, he would reintroduce Dowd to Yisrael as their king, as their Messiah, as the Son of God, as the chosen one, and yes, as their Savior. This is likely why Yahweh wanted his message translated and amplified into English, the language spoken by more Jews and Gentiles than any other on the planet. It is why the proper assessment of Moshe and Dowd is so vital to God and to his people, especially at this time. It is why Yahweh turned to Anakri, known as Yada, to awaken Yisrael, becoming the only time that he would ask his people to engage based upon what a foreigner had to say. But let's be clear. Yada, 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 yada is not foreign to Yah, nor to being a Yahud. This Nakri would serve as a Lama'an, a witness and a teacher, as someone providing the answers which can be Kara, read and recited on behalf of all people, especially Israel. Beyond the written translations and insights found in an introduction to God, Yada Yahowah, observations, coming home, Babel, Twistianity, and goddamn religion, even beyond the reach of Yah's word recited through Yada Yah radio and the social media outreach now through YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and even X. To broadcast this, the YAHOWAH blog, sometimes telling the tale of the dog. As we work through these programs, we now know that this was Yahweh's desire to introduce Yahweh to his people, the final witness for this time, the time of Jacob's troubles. As presented by Malachi 4:5, and Zechariah 4:14. Occasionally you saw as they began this program, a Wookiee sitting on the desk, and now you know about Asher having a field day with her tail as wagging it as a happy dog. That dogs are not estranged from God's program. No, one of the most important men in God's story is named Koleb. Koleb is the Hebrew word for dog. Koleb is known to us because Koleb had character. When they called spies went into the promised land, when they came to the borders, all but two men, one of which was vocal, came back shaking in their boots. Oh my God, there are big giants in there. There are people that are going to clean our clock. Oh, no way can we couldn't survive that. Scared, spitless. I want to go here and cower and cry. You brought us here to die. Except for two guys. Two guys said, listen. Koleb said, God's with us. Who can be against us? You think that the God that did all this for us up to this point is suddenly going to have our little arms tied and going to make it such that we can't defend ourselves? He gave this land to us. It's our land. Let's go. Let's wag our tails and charge ahead. The man's name was Koleb. Leb is loosely translated heart, so it means all heart. So a dog is all heart. Man's best friend. But that's not really what Leb means in Hebrew. It means to execute judgment. The heart was the seat of judgment, of your inclinations, of your character, of the way you processed information and then proceeded with it. And so Caleb was the most judgmental. He was the man with the greatest conviction. He was the man with the best attitude. And so we are, as we are poised to re-enter the promised land, we're proud to be joined by Koleb. So beyond all of this, there is but one reason that the Nakri, this observant and discerning foreigner from a faraway place and time, would have been introduced and authenticated by Yahweh during the dedication of his covenant home. Yahweh wants Israel and the world at large to consider what his Nakri, this final Zeroah, has translated and shared, because the information, these insights and perspective that he is providing are relevant, they are credible, it's valid, it is reconciling, it is indeed dependable and trustworthy. It's also indispensable at this time. 99% of what I'm telling you, no one has ever said before. And almost all of it you need to make an informed decision about whether or not you're going to be part of God's covenant family going forward or not. And this is the time or not. The best thing that can happen to or not is to cease to exist. So that's why he's here. That's why he's the first to reintroduce Yahweh's name to his people and 2,500 years. That's why he's the first to understand that Dowd is serving as the Messiah, the Son of God, that he is our Savior, that he's the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. Even though the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, he's the first to put that whole picture together ever. Single greatest discovery in human history, which means that he is the one person who qualifies as this Nakri. He's the one who has written all of these books behind me, free to you at yadayah.com, so that you would know the truth and could respond, so that you could listen to all I have to say and act upon it. Yes, Dowd is the object, and I am the messenger. He accomplished what we benefit from during Chag Matzah. And it's our willingness to properly credit the Passover lamb that is so important to our future. So Yada is devoted to cultivating these remaining harvests, Shabuah and Towrah, 1 year and 8 years from now. And he knows that there is going to be a productive Shabuah Katsir, followed 7 years later by a hard-fought Towrah Lakot. And then the Adamah Parah, the Nakri, will lay down his life for the remnant of Yisrael. My blood and ashes will cleanse the adulterous woman. Yahweh will come home, as will Dowd, and we will enjoy a marvelous family reunion. Now, by investigating something others have been either afraid or too lazy to consider, the Nakri became so uniquely relevant to knowing Yahweh, to appreciating what he's offering, and to recognize what he's asking in return, that God saw fit to validate his Lama'an, his witness, to his Shem, to the Torah, to the Nabayim, to Wa Mizmor, to the Bereth, to the Mikre, to Yisrael, to Yehudim, and most of all to his Bakor Hamasiach, our Ra'ah, shepherd, and Melech, king. The Zeroah of great significance, Dowd. That is why the Nakri is foretold. And all of this must transpire in our immediate future. Just 8 years from the time of this program, here now in the late spring of 2025. We are living in the most exciting and enlightening epoch of human history. Soon, the entire universe will be ours as we explore it with our Creator. Now, as it would transpire, Dabarim ha-yomim, words of the day, 2 Chronicles 6, well, it does not stand alone. As I completed the preceding translation, I received a note asking me to translate Yirmiyah, Jeremiah 6:16. As I did, I discovered that it addresses the same period when Israel's religious rebellion against Yahweh would necessitate a witness who would do what Yehudim would not. Listen. So I want to share this amazing prophetic portrayal of our time and our God's solution with you. And as we delve into this commending and condemning narrative, and it does both, it commends and it condemns. Keep in mind that while some of what was shared 2,600 years ago pertained to the immediate aftermath of the Assyrian conquest and subjugation of the northern kingdom of Israel, as well as to the impending Babylonian assault on Judea, And yet every word of it resonates with us today. This becomes especially true when we realize that Yirmiyahu's day was unique because rather than one or none to speak for Yah, there were a number of relatively concurrent prophets. So this was over a couple of 100-year period, and the overlap was fairly minimal, but nonetheless, we have prophets including Hosea, Yashayah, Amos, and Micah, who would have followed Chabauk, Zephaniah, and Obadiah. Obadiah, as he has said, but it's Obadiah, who were all contemporaries, and Yoel, Zechariah, and Malachi, who spoke for God shortly thereafter. From Dode's first passing and the end of his first life to 500 years before Dode would re-enter the mortal realm and fulfill Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim. In that 1,000-year period, particularly between 300 years after Dode's passing to 500 years before his return. So from 750 BCE to 450 BCE, during that period of time, all of these prophets emerged. God had a lot to say, and he knew he wasn't going to have long that he could communicate with his people, that the last of them was going to be Malachi. And so here you have all of them communicating during this period from 750 to 450. So this is a 300-year period. And you have the likes of Yashayah, Yirmiyahu, Hosea, Amos, Micah, Chabauk, Zephaniah, Obadiah, and Yoel, Zechariah, and Malachi. A lot of insights all gleaned from these prophets during this time. And to really understand them, you need to put them all together because they all provide a slightly different perspective on the same events. And that is precisely what we're going to do. So this begins, receive this warning so as to become correct, Yatsar. Choose to accept this admonition and even reprimand to show a willingness to be taught. Nifl imperative. Jerusalem. Or else I will disassociate my soul and consciousness from you in disgust and remain alienated and estranged. Yaka nefesh ani men hath. I will turn my persona away from you. Call imperfect for a very long period of time. And so that I don't cause you to become a wasted land, a ruinous, devastated, and desolated planet without inhabitants. Jeremiah 6:8. This is surprising for many. I've known it for a long time. But I think this is difficult for anyone who still has a foot in the religious camp to process. What God is saying is that if Israel were to stay obstinate, which they had been since the Exodus, Yahweh gave up on Israel during the Exodus. He went through the motions thereafter, but he brought them to the promised land and really stopped interacting with them. He would continue to give them prophetic admonition as we've listened to all of these prophets. But in terms of doing something beneficial for them, the last act would be helping to coordinate the sacrifice of Dode for Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. And so God had given up on his people. He announces the divorce actually through Hosea, but it had taken place a long time previously. And God is saying that if you don't get your act together, Israel, you don't change. If you don't receive this warning and become correct, yes, I'm going to destroy the planet. There's no reason to come back because there would be no recognition of what Dode had done on Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim to open the doorway to life, to perfect our souls by carrying our guilt away and by adopting us into the covenant family. There would be no Shabuah harvest because no one would know about it. There'd be no Teruah gleaning because no one would know about it. There'd be no sacrifice of the Adamah Parah because there would be no beneficiaries of it. There'd be no homecoming on Yom Kippurim because no one would be there. There'd be no reason to convert the earth back to the Garden of Eden because there'd be no one to camp out with. So he said, if you don't receive this warning that we're providing you with now, and become correct, accept this admonition and reprimand, and it's a reprimand. That no two ways about it. You've been awful, Israel. You pointed your finger between God's eyes. You spit in the face of your Creator. You've erased His name. You've disparaged His Son. And so if you don't receive this correction, Israel, particularly those of you in Jerusalem, which is where the sacrifices are, this last one is scheduled to be made and where the previous one was made, God's going to disassociate His consciousness. And this is called imperfect, literally and forever, if you don't get your act together. And I'm the primary voice in helping that occur because the rabbis have been deceiving you. The politicians are now counterproductive. Your IDF can no longer protect you. The world has turned against you. You may not like it very much, but the fact is that I'm your last best hope. And if you don't receive this warning and become correct, God's going to disassociate from you and remain alienated and estranged. And Israel, rather than enduring and surviving the time of Jacob's troubles, is going to succumb and become a ruinous and devastated place, just as the planet is destroyed without inhabitants. The man perpetrates great calamities, world war, nuclear holocaust. The planet is destroyed. If Israel, you do not heed this warning and give Yahowah a reason to come back. It's one of the most important concepts that I can share with you. There is this perception among many that Jews are God's people. No, they were the chosen people. They didn't choose God in return. And God chose to separate Himself from them. Now, that doesn't mean that God has chosen any others He has not. They are still the chosen people, but they'd have no benefit from that until they choose God in return. The line that Yahowah uses over and over again, if you shub, you return to me, I will return to you. And this is what Jews have to do. This, Yasar, you have to heed this admonition. This is a reprimand, Jerusalem. You either accept what I am telling you, or Israel will be destroyed, and the planet with it, and humankind will cease to exist estranged from God. There'll be no inhabitants to return to, no homecoming, no return to the Garden of Eden. Now, fortunately, Yahowah has seen the future, and we know that there are many Yehud who are going to heed this warning, that are going to respond, that are going to change, that are going to return to God. Many already have. More will, particularly as times get tougher and tougher as we move closer and closer to the beginning of the time of Jacob's troubles, and then in 2030, the fourth month, which is Abib 1, when I'm joined by Elia and God has signs and wonders in the sky above us. Many will come back. So this is the purpose of the Nakri, the observant foreigner. Yahweh is using him to admonish Jews and Israelis, warning them of their errant religious and political ways. It's what I do on X. It's what I do on Facebook, constantly telling people that for those that are promoting Jesus and Christianity, that he never existed. He is nothing but a crude counterfeit of Dode mixed with a heavy dose of Dionysus, and it's an absolute joke. There was no historic person known as Jesus, most certainly wasn't a Christ, and the whole thing was made up by Paul in 52 CE and then promoted in his letters thereafter. He's not real. And unfortunately, the lies that Paul perpetrated were piled right on top of the truth regarding the actual Son of God, actual Messiah, who was crucified by the Romans, fulfilling Passover in 33 CE. And that's the aforementioned David. No one has been more vocal in that regard in all of human history. In fact, no one has ever known that there was no Jesus, because he was a counterfeit and a product of identity theft. I'm the first person to realize that, and I prove it in the 5 volumes of Twistianity. And the first person to recognize that Tadod is the actual Messiah, the Son of God, who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, and prove it in the Coming Home series of Yada Yahowah. So here we are. My job is to reacquaint Yisraels with Yahweh's name, with their Messiah and Savior, with the actual dates that they mikre were fulfilled and by whom, and when the remaining will be fulfilled and where and by whom, so that God's people can capitalize on this, admit that they have been wrong, and embrace the truth. Going forward, shed all of the religiosity, shed all of their political stigmas, shed all of their affiliation with militarism and this myth that the IDF is somehow going to protect them, because it's not. Just as the IDF failed on October 7th, it's going to fail again on 1,000 times October 7th. That is where we are. So should the warning that Yahweh is heralding through Yada as his Nakri be ignored, the earth will be devastated, become lifeless and destroyed. This is the exact same message that Yahweh conveys in his last prophetic announcement in Malachi, the last of the Nabi. And he says it emphatically in the last chapter and the very last lines of Malachi, that if you don't get it by this time, if you don't respond, Israel, then I'm going to destroy the earth. There's no point in coming back. Well, this is because without the message conveyed through the Choter, there would be no harvest of Shabuah, there would be no gleaning on Towrah, there would be no Adamah Parah, there's no cure for the adulterous woman of Yisrael, there is no homecoming on Yom Kippurim, and without a remnant reconciled back into the covenant, without a family, there is no return to Eden, and the earth no longer serves any purpose. So if you want to know why Yahweh makes such a big fuss over Yada, over his Nakri, observant foreigner, his Choter, this stem off the main branch, this sucker that gives the fallen stump of Yisrael new life, this rod of divine judgment, his Edah, his restoring witness, the Zeroah, the one cultivating the seeds for a productive harvest, the Bashar, human herald, the Malach messenger, the Adamah Parah, bloody red man of the earth who is productive, who is also the Zebo men Edom, this man from Edom who saves many. Well, that's the answer. He's given you the answer. Can you process it? Are you willing to accept it? Can you benefit from it? These prophecies would go unfulfilled and would be for naught if it were not for what God is doing through this man. Now, we don't very often hear Yahweh referencing his nephesh soul, but he obviously has a form of nephesh consciousness, which is not only a sign of life, but also of being observant and responsive, and it ascribes a unique persona to God. Now, beyond the obvious, the advantage of Yahweh having a nephesh soul is that he can project it when entering lesser dimensions. And while all of God won't fit into our universe, this aspect of him, his nephesh, can be deployed within any life form of his choosing. Plus, as we move through the universe and through time and Shamayim, Yahweh, who is comprised of light energy with a nephesh, can relate to us because he can be like us, or better yet, when we have our nephesh souls embraced by this enormous amount of additional energy and light that God's going to surround our souls with, then we are like God. And when we go off and travel and explore new galaxies and planets and universes and the like, we go the same way. We have a soul encapsulated within light energy, just like our God. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's one of the reasons that Yahweh has a nephesh. He going to make us more like him. However, Yahweh is particular, and he chooses not to associate with religious scum. He doesn't like political pricks much either. And even with his people, when they estrange themselves from him, he reciprocates. And the consequence of being disassociated from the source of life is devastating, and it's desolating. Roman Emperor Hadrian's assault on Yehudah and Yehudim, on Jews and on Judah, was so diabolical and ruthless. Between those he butchered and those he enslaved, the land was largely without inhabitants. And while there was always a remnant of Jews in the land, along with some Arab squatters and Christian interlopers, the population was relatively insignificant prior to Israel becoming a nation again in 1948. And now, if it were not for Yahweh laying the foundation for his return, outnumbered 100 to 1 by murderous Muslims and also the Marxists who are pimping for them, all seeking the annihilation of God's people, they would be devastated. So, consistent with what he revealed in what is now the 17th chapter of Yashaya Isaiah, Yahweh is affirming that there will be 2 labor-intensive gleanings. The first on Shabuah, the second on Towrah. But even then, there will be a remnant, many of whom will have been left behind because, well, they have not made the commitment to the covenant yet. From God's perspective, they are receptive to it. They have not precluded themselves by being overtly religious or political. And so they are potentially receptive to it, where all of those who have been harvested and gleaned, they have accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant. They have benefited from the Moed Mikre. They have been enveloped in the Spirit by way of the teachings of Elia and Yada, while these others are there for this opportunity. And the preponderance of them are going to die by a relentless flood of mujahideen before this event transpires, and because they're just not receptive to what God is offering. So this will be our last line for the reprise of A Dog's Tale of Chakmah Choter, and it reads, And thus Yahowah of the spiritual implements says, they will either be thoroughly and effectively gleaned with a second harvest of what remains, or be among the foolish who are ruthlessly abused. Alal, alal. They will either be subjugated and subjected, part of a second ingathering, or left behind, struck, and killed. Similar to the trindle, stem, or vine, as the surviving remnant of Yisrael, either individuals who strive against and struggle with God, or those who engage and endure with the Almighty, returning, Shub, your hand and influence in the manner of one who gathers in the harvest, or fences in and restrains, over and around the branches comprised of the valued or rejected. Wow, that's a lot of contrast, wasn't it, for a statement? You can be on the good side or the bad side of any of this. And so it's something that we will analyze in our next program. But just as a quick review, this is a message from Yahowah. And he is telling us that you are either going to be thoroughly and effectively gleaned with a second harvest of what remains, which is the benefit of the evening of Towrah, or you're going to be among the foolish who are ruthlessly abused. Because this is the very end of the time of Yaakov's troubles, and there are mujahideen everywhere, and they are, of course, Muslims, and therefore ruthless. And he says that this is similar to the trindle, the stem, or the vine, as a surviving remnant of Yisrael. Of which side are you on? Are you still struggling with God, or are you enduring with him? All because of the influence of your hand and the manner of one who gathers in and harvests, or fences in and restrains. And both of these actually, batsar, can be a positive thing in association with teruah, because the one who gathers in, that is part of the teruah gleaning, the evening of teruah, and those who are fenced in are being protected for the next day for the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. And you can then be the branch that is valued or rejected. Yeshayah says there will be 2 or 3 olives that will be harvested, gleaned, if you will, on the uppermost branch, which would be representing Yahudim, and 4 or 5 from the branches that have been cut off. These would be Yisrael at this time, and the others are going to be protected. And they're protected within rocky crags and around this verbose stem, if you will, to use Yashayah's terminology, because they're there to benefit from the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, to be the mortal remnant that enters the millennial Shabat. So that's a lot to ponder. We'll return to this when our program is fresh and our minds are fresh here this time tomorrow. So I thank you very much for listening, for putting up with our dog's tail as we had a little glitch and the live streaming today, but all works out. And, we can roll with the punches, overcome obstacles that are tossed in our way, and still present a cogent message pursuant to Yahowah and his people at this time. Well, thank you for listening. This has been a very special edition of the YAHOWAH blog, and I'm your host, Craig Winn.